We're now moving on to a fireside chat. I'm going to be joined by Nick Hodder, who's the Assistant Director of Digital Transformation at Imperial War Museum. And we're going to try and have a conversation around AI in 20 minutes. So do wish us luck. And if anyone during the conversation has anything to kind of input or any questions in and around what we're saying, just throw your hand up and I will get to you as well. So if we could put our hands together and welcome Nick. Thank you. Cheers. So Nick, do you want to just give yourself a quick intro, given 20 minutes to talk about AI?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So I'm Nick Hodder. I'm from Imperial War Museums. I'm the Assistant Director of Digital Transformation. We have 5 museums, including a warship and a working airfield, so that gets complicated. And we've been undertaking a digital transformation for probably around 3 years so far. I used to work for Sun Microsystems and Google, so I'm historically a nerd. I left Google to join the not-for-profit sector in 2015. So I'm very interested in AI and also things like blockchain and things. So I think, and we've got a lot of movement generally across technology, but particularly in AI and things like blockchain at the moment. So yes, very interested in the area, very interested to chat about that if you want to collar me at some point. Yeah.
So we're all well aware that AI is revolutionising kind of digital transformation approach, but we'd probably still say it's in its kind of infancy and remains a complex area for most businesses. And this is quite a fully loaded question, but what kind of overall impact do you see of its use within the enterprise, and what trends are you currently seeing for business application?
So we tend to look at this in a kind of 3 horizons. I don't know if you're familiar with McKinsey's 3 horizons. Essentially, we know in digital transformation that we can look like a year or 2 ahead and have relative certainty about what we're going to be doing, but we don't know what's going to happen maybe 3, 4, 5 years out. So 3 horizons basically says your first horizon is like a year, you know what you're doing for the next year. Your second horizon is I'm pretty certain what we might need to do, but I'm not sure how we're going to do it. And then horizon 3 is maybe 5 years or more in the future, which is like I've got an idea maybe where the organization might be going at that point. You know, we've got a long-term strategy, but I have no idea how I'm going to facilitate that. So the interesting thing is that sounds very, like all strategic approaches, that sounds good on paper. And then, you know, you're looking at your digital transformation strategy and then this year happens. And you're suddenly like, actually, I need to rethink this whole thing. So my horizon 2 has become very blurred very quickly. Even my horizon 1, you know, I'm starting to have doubts about actually should I be building what I'm thinking about building right now. So I think it's worth calling out the fact that actually it's a good time to pause and reflect and think about actually, is this how we want this to play out? Like, do we need to stop and think for a bit? So there's that. I think the other thing is it's very cool when you get to play with ChatGPT and start like prompt engineering and stuff. You can do some cool stuff, but is it ready for prime time? Is one of the things I would say. So I hate chatbots. I think chatbots. I think they actually inhibit the customer experience really badly. I think they do untold damage to your brand if you badly implement a chatbot, and very few of them are well implemented. And AI, and particularly large language models like ChatGPT, are going to make chatbots a lot better, right? But to some of the points that like Charlie made, like our job is not to like squeeze in as much technology into our businesses as possible. It's to actually, I think actually, you know, we need to take a few steps back because this is an area where we can lead. Because we, in our roles, have access to a huge amount of customer data and insight. We can see how customer behaviors are changing, and it's our opportunity to actually say, let's pause, right? Let's look at actually how the landscape is changing, what people are doing, because this could mean fundamental changes, not just to our digital transformation, but to how we approach things as a business. Simultaneously, it's not ready for prime time. ChatGPT is wrong frequently. It sounds very convincing, which is the worst kind of wrong, when you're going to have your chatbot convincingly tell your customer something that is incorrect. So I think we need to be really cognizant of that. So the other thing is, I think this is in a Hemingway quote, is, how did you go bankrupt? At first slowly, and then all at once. And I feel like that's probably what this looks like. So AI is going to be a bit imperfect for 1, 2, 3 years. And then all of a sudden, it'll start getting a lot better at a lot of the things that it's not very good at right now. And so we need to be prepared for it not to work great for the next 2, 3 years, but also be prepared for it to suddenly, come to fruition at some point in the next 5 years. And so for us, in terms of planning, that's really hard to manage. Although we'll probably get onto this in a bit. I think there are some ways in which you can think about this that will help. Yeah.
And you said about what Charlie said about squeezing technology in. I think what we often seen with technology in business, enterprise technology, is a bit of an arms race with organizations getting the technology and not fully understanding kind of the business application. But how can organizations go about assessing their AI needs, requirements? You said about kind of pausing, taking a step back. How can businesses look at it from an investment and implementation?
You said something about what are our AI needs, which is sort of reflective of some of the conversations I've had with board members and things. And I think there was an article in CIO this week which talks about people are hiring chief AI officers, which is obviously ludicrous. It's really stupid, right? Because AI is just a tool. And what are our AI needs is also a dumb question. The right question is, what are our needs? More importantly, what are our customers' needs? And so getting that, we do a lot of, we're starting to do a lot of service design at IWM, which is actually led by the digital transformation team, but it isn't digital transformation. It is just trying to understand what the optimal service looks like from the customer's perspective, and then understanding what people and what processes we need in the organization for that, and then bringing in technology to enable that. AI definitely plays a role in that, but it's the last thing we think about, not the first thing we think about. And this is the problem with chatbots and things, because too many digital transformations started off with, oh, if we implement an app, we can save X amount of money, we can generate X amount more income. And if you're us, actually, I don't blame you for this. You're like, well, if I do that, we'll make this much money. I've justified my salary. I might get a nice bonus. Like, actually, personally speaking, that's worth doing. But it's really short-termist. And I appreciate there are some public companies, and you do have to hit your numbers each quarter and each year. But this is where it comes down to leadership, and you need to have conversations with your leadership about actually, we need to make some solid long-term decisions here. There might be short-term opportunities, and there might be quick wins that you could and should definitely pursue. But going all in, hiring, I wouldn't recommend you hire your chief AI officer just yet, basically.
So whose is the responsibility to kind of deal with that side of is it the technology team? Is it who should be assessing?
Whose responsibility is it to deal with AI?
Yeah.
Well, I guess everyone's, because there's different aspects to that question.
Yeah.
So right now there are loads of people uploading your sort of contracts and your confidential business information to ChatGPT. As we speak, I guarantee that's happening. That happened to someone in Samsung, and then it turned out if you started asking ChatGPT questions, it started giving you Samsung's basically confidential data about their policies, etc. So, I mean, step one would be have a word with your HR department, etc. Get a policy in place to ensure that people know that they have a responsibility in terms of the data. And again, we might get onto this in a bit. This is the most important thing. Isn't how can I very quickly use ChatGPT to make some money? That might be a relevant question, but the most important question is, how is my organization prepared for AI? What data do we have? Do I own that data? Does someone else own that data? What data am I willing to give to a large language model? Which data am I not? Which fields am I willing to do that with? Which fields aren't I willing to do that with? Which large language models are we happy to use? because you might be happy enough with Microsoft or ChatGPT, and you might be happy enough with Google and Bard. But you're about to see a lot of large language models created by lots of different organizations in lots of different companies, including state-built LLMs. And they won't tell you that they're built by the Chinese government. An LLM will just be there, and people start using, oh, this is good. And it will be like the TikTok LLM, and that'll be all lovely. But you're giving away all of your data to the people that own that LLM. And that's something that we need to be really conscious of. So straight away, there are some risks that have to be addressed. Who's responsible for that? Well, you are responsible for leading the conversations around it, but you might not be the person responsible for writing the policy, but you probably input into it. Because it has to be, one of the challenges we all have in digital transformation is we're dealing with very siloed organizations, very clunky customer experiences that move across those silos. So that was already a problem, and now we've got there's probably some shadow IT going on in terms of use of LLMs, etc. And people probably in those silos thinking about their own applications for AI without coming together and thinking, okay, how do we understand how this affects our business, and how we can address that? And some businesses are super reliant on SEO and Google, and that there's a chance that a huge chunk of people might just start asking an LLM instead of Googling it. I'm no longer a Google shareholder, by the way, just so you know, going into this question. But and that's a problem, right? Because if you're searching for the best museum in London, you get one answer from ChatGPT, and if it's not us, that's a problem for me. So yeah, whereas we might have ranked like 3rd or 4th in Google, and we'd have been visible. So there's the fact that ChatGPT might not recommend you. There's a chance that ChatGPT suddenly decides that it doesn't like your museum, that it doesn't recommend IWM. So there's a whole range of issues there that affect the whole business. So there's opportunity, there's risk. It involves everyone in your leadership team. The best thing you can do right now is start those conversations and start explaining how it works. Because the other problem I've got is that people think all AI is the same, and that there's one AI called ChatGPT and it does all things, right? And a lot of the applications we're interested in are computer vision. It's a very different model. And there are foundation models that might combine different models to give you better outcomes over time. That's certainly what Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google are working on. But as yet, that hasn't come about.
And what kind of solutions and services are currently available to kind of the enterprise as a buyer, and who are kind of the major players servicing enterprise within this kind of space? So
what you'll see, I haven't chatted to the vendors out there, some of you might be in the room, but loads of people are integrating OpenAI APIs into their products. So some of the general, and certainly a lot of the cybersecurity products starting to use a lot of AI stuff as well. So you'll see that across almost all of the vendors where we're looking to integrate OpenAI's API, and maybe Google will make one available as well. So you've got that, but that's potentially kind of fragmented. The biggie for me right now is Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is, so we're almost certainly going to be trialing that. It's expensive because it's expensive to run, right? Yeah. The interesting is Microsoft started using Facebook's language. They used the language of the graph. So they're basically saying, we're going to build a graph of all of your internal company data, and you can use essentially like ChatGPT, and it will give you contextual answers, which is great, but also because it's built into the suite of O365 and D365 products, it will start to automatically, it will create your PowerPoint presentation, it will write your email, it will automatically send your email. You can apparently send it to meetings on your behalf, but then I was thinking, like, what if like everyone sends Copilot on that? What is the conversation? So I'm very curious about it. Let's try that when we get the opportunity. Google are doing a similar thing with their workplace product. So this is, by the way, the problem is that it's so incredibly expensive to train these models. They use, I think for ChatGPT 3, they use, I think 10,000 servers, 285,000 cores, something like that. costs $3.5 million to train it. One iteration of training costs $3.5 million. So every time you do it, that's quite expensive. And then it's got to be a lot higher now, but the last number I saw was $700,000 a day and 35 cents per query. So ChatGPT is paying 35 cents, by the way, for every query you write, which should tell you something. It's that you're not the customer, you're training its model. So you're actually OpenAI's workforce. And so it's the scale that's important, and it means that there are going to be very few. It'll be the same old ones: Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon. There might be a few others who are getting venture funding to attempt to compete. But the problem is, the more scale you got, the quicker you can train your model, the more you learn, and so it's all about monopolies at this point. And so that's why I think a lot of the big LLMs outside of the US will be state-funded. The UK government have suggested that the UK could become a hub for AI, not without quite a few £1 billion worth of investment, and so I don't know where that's coming from. It's an interesting idea, but I need to see the plans for that. Yeah. So I think it's very monopolized. So what we're going to see is a lot of growth very quickly from the likes of Google and Microsoft. They're likely to, for all of us, they're likely to be our first foray. I think it'll be interesting. I don't know how it's going to pan out.
Has anyone got any questions at this point or anything to kind of add? Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. On this topic, obviously, we saw one of the godfathers of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, leave your former company, Google, recently, and sort of cited a lot about the foreboding dangers of AI. I think you get a bifurcated view here of some people who think it's going to be amazing and increase productivity. Others think it's the lead to the death of humanity. Wanted your personal perspective on it, Nick.
Okay, so obviously I work for the Imperial War Museum, and we cover conflict up to the present day. So we are currently doing, in our programming, we're starting to do stuff about this question. There's a very interesting Netflix documentary called Unknown Killer Robots, which I recommend unless you don't want to be thinking about the end of the world. So it's the people that you've got to think about this documentary. It's the people that are willing to speak about the stuff they're developing. So that's a very tiny slice of all the people who are developing military hardware and AI. So a couple of interesting things. They're developing drone swarms, so they can send a bit like the Osama bin Laden capture. Instead of sending in Black Hawk helicopters, which seem to crash all the time, they just send in swarms of drones that use computer vision to determine who is a threat, who isn't, who is the target, who isn't, and just take them out. Asimov's rules of robotics are out the window. In the military, if you were to say, would you rather a human or a robot, takes the kill decision, they'll say robot every time, I suspect. Because humans tend to start thinking about whether they want to kill someone, and that's inconvenient when you need to kill someone as quickly as possible. So those rules are out the window. There's an interesting, in this documentary, there's an interesting thing, there's the army version of Top Gun. And they get the top person in the flight academy to do a dogfight against an AI. It's not in the sky yet. It was just in a simulator. So if you watch Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick, you will see when they're in a dogfight, they tend to shoot each other from behind. Okay, and the reason is if they're going towards each other, that's a combined 2,000 miles per hour, and it's hard to make decisions quickly in that situation. So no one is that insane. So humans don't do that. This fighter pilot lost a dogfight 5 times in a row, so he was 5 for 0. The problem he had was that every time the AI won, it came to him head on. And it came to him head on because it could fly with absolute precision, and it had no fear of death. Right? So already, we've got robots that can kill you. Right? But if you're to think about where this goes, in the short term and medium term, I think there's lots of opportunity, but there's also some threat. There's some threat around actually just primarily misinformation. People think that AI has to be sentient in order to kill us. It doesn't. It just has to be. It just has to have a mission that it's trying to complete and identify that we're in the way. And if we're in the way, there's any number of ways it can manipulate us. So Geoffrey Hinton talks a lot about this. There's another guy who's done an excellent TED talk about this. He's been working on what they call the alignment problem since the year 2000, so over 20 years. And he's got an excellent blog post called, I think it's called AGI, a list of lethalities, and he lists 60 reasons why AI will kill us. So, if you're that person and you want to know all about that, then please go ahead and Google it. I'm not sure if I'd definitely recommend it, right? But I do think there is it's that at first slowly and then all of a sudden thing. We will think it's really dumb until it isn't. And so I am genuinely like a bit concerned about this and think we should be doing a lot more about it. There are immediate opportunities that I think we can take advantage of. So I'm probably more pessimistic about this than I have been any other technology, but I think there's really good reasons. When you've got people like Geoffrey Hinton warning about it, I think it's cause for concern. You've got people who have been relentlessly optimistic about technology and even social media. They were relentlessly optimistic about social media of all things. Yet for this, they're genuinely like partly, Google themselves are actually relatively cautious about this stuff. So yeah, I think there is reason to be concerned. Don't have nightmares. Don't watch any of the things I told you to watch. But I think we should be conscious of that, and we should be supportive of any steps to regulate things. I mean, I don't know how you regulate an LLM controlled by the Chinese government, but we could give it a go.
We know when Elon Musk is calling for ethics and governance, then it's probably required.
It's astounding, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's all we've got time for. Hopefully, I know we've done quite a lot in 20 minutes there, but hopefully it's kind of a precursor for some conversation you might like to have with Nick during the day. Nick's sticking around until kind of early afternoon-ish.
Yeah, lunchtime.
So if you kind of want to have a conversation with Nick about anything he said and explore those ideas further, do grab Nick. But that's all we've got time for. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you.